Marcus Chen had always considered himself the most unlucky engineer in the solar system. While his colleagues worked on prestigious projects like Mars terraforming or Jupiter mining operations, he found himself stuck maintaining the ancient atmospheric processors on Kepler 442b, a forgotten research outpost at the edge of human space. The morning started like any other disaster waiting to happen. Marcus crawled through the cramped maintenance tunnels beneath Research Station Alpha, his toolkit clanking against the metal walls as sparks showered from yet another failing power coupling. The processors had been acting up for weeks, and Command refused to send replacement parts to such a remote location. "Just my luck," he muttered, wiping sweat from his forehead as he spliced damaged wiring. "Everyone else gets the glory missions, and I get to babysit equipment older than my grandfather." The irony wasn't lost on him that humanity's greatest expansion into the galaxy was supported by duct tape, determination, and engineers like him who nobody remembered until something broke. Marcus had graduated top of his class from the Luna Engineering Academy, dreaming of building the impossible. Instead, he spent his days preventing atmospheric systems from killing everyone on a research station that studied microorganisms in soil samples. As he worked, his tablet chimed with an incoming transmission. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing Dr. Sarah Williams, the station's lead researcher. Her usually calm demeanor showed cracks of concern. "Marcus, we're detecting massive energy signatures approaching the system. Long-range sensors picked up something big about 6 hours out. Command wants all critical systems at maximum operational capacity." Marcus groaned, looking at the sparking mess around him. "Define maximum operational capacity, because right now we're running on prayers and coffee fumes. These processors are held together with hope and spare parts from 3 different manufacturers. Do what you can. The energy readings don't match any known human technology, and they're not responding to our hails. Could be first contact." The transmission ended, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts and a growing sense of dread. First contact scenarios were the stuff of academy simulations and xenobiology textbooks. They weren't supposed to happen to unlucky engineers on forgotten research stations. He doubled his efforts, rerouting power conduits and bypassing damaged sections with increasingly creative solutions. The atmospheric processors hummed to life with renewed vigor, though Marcus suspected they were running on borrowed time. Everything human-built seemed to run on borrowed time these days. Hours later, the station's emergency klaxons began wailing. Marcus emerged from the maintenance tunnels to find the research staff gathered around the main display screens, watching in stunned silence as something impossible descended through the atmosphere. The ship was massive, easily dwarfing the largest human vessels. Its hull gleamed with an opalescent sheen that seemed to shift colors in the light, and its design followed no engineering principles Marcus recognized. Smooth curves replaced the angular efficiency of human construction, and energy patterns danced across its surface like living aurora. "Well," Marcus said to no one in particular, "this day just keeps getting better." The alien vessel settled into a stable orbit, and within minutes, smaller craft began launching toward the research station. Dr. Williams activated the emergency protocols, sealing blast doors and powering up what few defensive systems the research outpost possessed. Not that their mining lasers and atmospheric shields would do much good against technology that could cross interstellar space with such apparent ease. The first alien shuttle touched down on the landing pad with surprising gentleness. Marcus watched from the observation deck as a hatch opened with a soft hiss of equalizing pressure. What emerged made him question his understanding of the universe. She was tall, easily 7 feet, with pale skin that seemed to shimmer with an inner light. Her hair was silver white, flowing like liquid mercury, and her eyes held a depth that spoke of ages beyond human comprehension. But it was her movements that caught Marcus's attention. She moved with predatory grace, each step calculated and purposeful, like a great cat stalking through tall grass. Behind her came others of her kind, all sharing similar features, but none carrying the same aura of barely contained authority. They wore form-fitting garments that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, adapting to their movements with impossible fluidity. "Magnificent," Dr. Williams whispered. "Look at their technology, their physiology. This is the discovery of the millennium." Marcus was less impressed with the discovery aspect and more concerned with the survival implications. The lead alien's expression suggested someone accustomed to getting her way, and the way her followers deferred to her spoke of rigid hierarchy. In his experience, rigid hierarchies and first contact situations rarely ended well for the smaller party. The aliens approached the station's main entrance, and Dr. Williams made the decision to meet them in the primary airlock. Marcus found himself volunteered for the welcoming committee, much to his dismay. "Why me?" he protested. "I'm just an engineer. Shouldn't we have diplomats for this sort of thing?" "Because," Dr. Williams replied, checking her translation software one final time, "you're the only one here who understands how everything works. If something goes wrong, we need someone who can keep us alive long enough to figure out what went wrong." The airlock cycled through its sequence with agonizing slowness. Marcus stood behind Dr. Williams, trying to look competent and non-threatening while his mind raced through emergency protocols he'd never thought he'd need. The inner door finally opened, revealing the alien delegation. Up close, the lead alien was even more intimidating. Her pale skin held an almost luminescent quality, and her silver eyes seemed to catalog every detail of the humans before her. When she spoke, her voice carried a musical quality that the translation software struggled to process. "I am Empress Zarathi of the Kithara Dominion," the words emerged from the translator with mechanical precision. "This system falls under our territorial claim. You will explain your presence." Dr. Williams stepped forward, her diplomatic training taking over. "I am Dr. Sarah Williams, representing the United Earth Colonial Administration. We established this research outpost under the Kepler Colonization Accords. We're conducting peaceful scientific research." The Empress's expression shifted slightly, something that might have been amusement or annoyance. "Your species is unknown to us. Your territorial claims are meaningless. However, your technology shows primitive ingenuity." Marcus bristled at the word primitive, though he had to admit their equipment probably looked like stone tools compared to whatever the aliens possessed. Still, primitive or not, human engineering had carried them across impossible distances and kept them alive in environments that should have killed them. "We're willing to establish diplomatic relations," Dr. Williams continued. "Perhaps we can find mutually beneficial arrangements." Empress Zarathi's gaze shifted to Marcus, and he felt like a specimen under a microscope. "You, the one with the tools. You maintain their crude machines." Marcus straightened, finding his voice despite his nervousness. "Yes, Your Majesty. I'm the chief engineer for this facility. Show me." It wasn't a request. Marcus glanced at Dr. Williams, who nodded reluctantly. Leading an alien empress through a research station's maintenance areas wasn't exactly covered in the first contact protocols. But then again, nothing about this situation was normal. Marcus guided the small group through the station's corridors, pointing out various systems and explaining their functions in simple terms. The Empress listened with surprising attention, asking technical questions that demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of engineering principles. "Your power distribution is inefficient," she observed, studying a junction box that Marcus had recently repaired. "And your materials science is limited. Yet you achieve functionality through creative compensation." "We call it making do with what we have," Marcus replied. "Human engineering isn't always elegant, but it works. Indeed, your species shows remarkable adaptability. Most civilizations we encounter either possess advanced technology or remain planet-bound. You bridge the gap through determination and—" She paused, searching for the right word. Stubbornness. They reached the atmospheric processing center where Marcus's earlier repairs were holding steady. The Empress examined the jury-rigged systems with what appeared to be professional interest. "This should not function," she stated flatly. "Your power couplings are mismatched, your control algorithms are crude, and your backup systems are compromised. Yet it operates within acceptable parameters." Marcus felt a flush of pride despite the criticism. Sometimes the impossible just takes a little longer. We've learned to make things work, even when they shouldn't. For the first time since her arrival, Empress Zarathi's expression showed something approaching respect. An admirable trait. Many species possess superior technology, but lack the ingenuity to adapt when circumstances change. The tour continued, with the Empress asking increasingly detailed questions about human engineering philosophy and problem-solving approaches. Marcus found himself relaxing slightly, falling into the familiar rhythm of explaining technical concepts to someone who actually understood them. It was in the central power core that everything changed. Marcus was demonstrating the fusion containment system, explaining how they maintained stable plasma despite using reactor components designed for different specifications, when alarms began blaring throughout the station. "Containment breach in Sector 7, the computer announced with mechanical calm. "Radiation levels approaching critical thresholds. All personnel evacuate to safe zones immediately." Dr. Williams's face went pale. "That's the biological research lab. If we lose containment there, the whole station could be contaminated." Marcus was already moving, grabbing emergency tools from the nearest maintenance locker. "The automated systems must have failed. I need to get down there and implement manual shutdown procedures." "The radiation levels," Dr. Williams started, "are within tolerances for short exposure with proper protection." Marcus cut her off. "Someone has to do it, and I'm the only one who knows the systems well enough to work fast." Empress Zarathi had been listening to the exchange with growing interest. "Your species willingly exposes individuals to lethal radiation to preserve the whole?" "When necessary," Marcus replied, sealing his radiation suit. "It's what we do." "Fascinating. Most civilizations would simply evacuate and accept the loss." Marcus paused at the access hatch leading to the affected section. "Maybe that's the difference between surviving and thriving. We don't accept losses when we can prevent them." He disappeared into the maintenance tunnel system, leaving behind an alien empress with a growing appreciation for human determination and a growing concern for the strange engineer who had just risked his life for people he barely knew. The radiation in Sector 7 was worse than the sensors indicated. Marcus's suit readings climbed steadily as he worked his way through the contaminated sections, following emergency lighting toward the source of the breach. The biological research lab had suffered a complete containment failure, and radioactive coolant was spreading through the ventilation system. Working by feel as much as sight, Marcus located the manual override controls and began the delicate process of isolating the contaminated sections. Each step required precise timing and careful calculation, knowing that a single mistake could turn a containable incident into a station-destroying catastrophe. "Status report," Dr. Williams's voice crackled through his comm system. "Almost there," Marcus replied, sweat beading inside his helmet despite the suit's cooling system. "Just need to reroute the coolant flow and activate the emergency purge sequence." His radiation detector was clicking like an angry insect, but the levels were still within survivable limits. Barely. Marcus finished the bypass procedures and initiated the automated cleanup systems, watching as contamination readings slowly began to drop. "Containment restored," he announced, allowing himself a moment of relief. "Give me 10 minutes to double-check the seals, and I'll be back up." When Marcus finally emerged from the maintenance tunnels, he found Empress Zarathi waiting for him in the decontamination chamber. Her silver eyes studied him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "Your radiation exposure exceeded safe parameters by a factor of 3, she stated. Yet you continued working. Marcus shrugged, exhaustion making him careless with protocol. Someone had to fix it. Better one person takes a risk than everyone pays the price. Your species' disregard for individual safety in service of collective survival is remarkable and foolish. Maybe both, Marcus admitted, but it works for us." The Empress was quiet for a long moment, her expression unreadable. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a different tone, something Marcus couldn't quite identify. "I have seen many species across the galaxy. Most fall into predictable patterns of behavior. Your kind defies classification. Is that good or bad?" "It is interesting. My people value strength, efficiency, and order. We expand through superior technology and overwhelming force. Your expansion follows no logical pattern, yet you persist in environments that should destroy you." Marcus finished the decontamination sequence and stepped out of the chamber. "We're stubborn that way." "Indeed." The Empress paused, seeming to wrestle with some internal decision. "Engineer Marcus Chen, I have a proposition for you." Marcus stared at Empress Zarathi, wondering if the radiation exposure had affected his hearing. "A proposition? I'm not sure I understand." The Empress moved closer, her predatory grace making Marcus acutely aware of how dangerous she truly was. Despite her elegant appearance, there was something fundamentally alien about her presence, like standing near a sleeping tiger. "My people have conquered 17 star systems through superior technology and military might. Yet we face challenges that brute force cannot solve. Our automated systems are efficient but inflexible. When they encounter unexpected problems, they simply shut down and await repair." Dr. Williams had joined them, her expression carefully neutral despite the obvious tension in the room. "What does this have to do with Marcus?" "Your engineer demonstrates the adaptive problem-solving my people lack. He maintains impossible systems through creative thinking and accepts personal risk for collective benefit. These traits are rare among the civilizations we have encountered." Marcus felt a growing sense of unease. "You're talking about me like I'm some kind of test subject." "In a sense, you are." The Empress's honesty was unsettling. "My flagship, the Void Stalker, suffers from a unique malfunction. Our most advanced engineers cannot solve it because they think within rigid parameters. They cannot conceive of solutions that violate established principles." "So you want me to take a look at your broken spaceship?" Marcus asked, incredulity creeping into his voice. "I specialize in atmospheric processors and fusion reactors, not whatever impossible technology you people use." "That is precisely why you might succeed where others have failed. You think outside conventional boundaries." Dr. Williams stepped forward. "What exactly are you proposing?" "Marcus is a civilian researcher under Earth's protection." The Empress's silver eyes flashed with something that might have been amusement. "Protection? Your research station possesses minimal defenses, and your nearest military support is months away. You are in no position to make demands." The threat hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Marcus realized that their entire situation had shifted from first contact to potential hostage scenario in the span of a few hours. Yet something in the Empress's demeanor suggested this wasn't entirely about coercion. "However," she continued, "I prefer cooperation to conquest. If Engineer Chen can solve our problem, I will provide your species with significant technological advances and formal recognition of your territorial claims in this system." "And if I can't solve it?" Marcus asked. "Then you will have learned much about Cathara technology before your inevitable failure. Knowledge is its own reward." The casual way she dismissed his chances of success stung Marcus's professional pride. He had spent years making impossible repairs with inadequate tools and materials. Alien technology might be advanced, but engineering problems were engineering problems. "What kind of malfunction are we talking about?" he asked, curiosity overcoming caution. The Empress gestured toward the observation windows, where her massive flagship dominated the view of space. The Voidstalker is equipped with a quantum displacement drive that allows instantaneous travel between star systems. 3 months ago, the drive began exhibiting erratic behavior. It functions normally for routine operations, but fails catastrophically when attempting long-range displacement. Marcus frowned. "What do your engineers think is causing it?" "They have identified 17 potential failure points and developed solutions for each. None have proven effective. The drive continues to malfunction despite all logical repairs." "Maybe the problem isn't logical," Marcus mused. "Sometimes systems develop quirks that don't make sense on paper but are real nonetheless. What happens when it fails?" The Empress's expression darkened. "The last long-range displacement attempt resulted in spatial distortion that nearly tore the ship apart. We lost an entire engineering deck and 23 crew members. Since then, we have been limited to conventional propulsion." The weight of those deaths settled over the conversation like a heavy blanket. Marcus understood the pressure of keeping people alive through technical expertise, but 23 lives lost to a malfunction was beyond anything he had experienced. "I'll need full access to your technical specifications and the opportunity to examine the drive systems directly," he said finally. Dr. Williams looked alarmed. "Marcus, you can't seriously be considering this. We know nothing about their technology or their intentions." "We know they could have destroyed us already if they wanted to," Marcus replied, "and 23 people are dead because of a problem that might have a solution. I have to try." The Empress nodded approvingly. "Spoken like a true engineer. Very well. You will accompany me to the Voidstalker immediately. Dr. Williams and your research team will remain here as guests until the matter is resolved." The implication was clear. Marcus was going whether he wanted to or not, but his cooperation would determine how well his colleagues were treated. It was coercion wrapped in the language of professional courtesy. "How long do I have?" Marcus asked. "The Kithara High Command expects our return within 2 standard cycles. If the drive is not operational by then, they will dispatch a fleet to retrieve us. Your species' first contact with that fleet would be less cordial than our current meeting. 2 weeks to solve a problem that an entire civilization's best engineers couldn't fix." Marcus had faced impossible deadlines before, but this was beyond anything in his experience. The transport shuttle to the Voidstalker was a marvel of alien engineering. It moved with perfect silence through the vacuum of space, its interior providing artificial gravity and atmospheric conditions identical to Earth normal. Marcus spent the brief journey staring out at the massive flagship, trying to comprehend the scale of what he was attempting. The Voidstalker was beautiful in the way that only perfectly functional things could be beautiful. Every line served a purpose, every surface contributed to the whole, and the overall effect was of controlled power waiting to be unleashed. It made human starships look like crude approximations of the concept of spaceflight. Docking was seamless, the shuttle integrating with the flagship's systems as if it had been designed specifically for that purpose, which, Marcus realized, it probably had been. The Kithara approach to technology seemed to emphasize perfect integration and flawless operation rather than the adaptable redundancy that characterized human designs. The Empress led him through corridors that stretched beyond his sight, past chambers filled with crew members who watched him with curious silver eyes. The ship felt alive in ways that human vessels never did, with subtle harmonics and energy patterns that suggested systems operating in perfect synchronization. "Your people build beautiful ships," Marcus observed. "Function determines form," the Empress replied. "Beauty is the inevitable result of perfect efficiency." They entered a vast chamber filled with displays, control interfaces, and what Marcus assumed were diagnostic stations. Cathara engineers moved between the various workstations with fluid precision, their pale features illuminated by the soft glow of holographic readouts. "This is our primary engineering section," the Empress explained. "Chief Engineer Veltar will provide you with technical data and assist with your investigation." Chief Engineer Veltar approached with the same predatory grace that characterized all the Cathara Marcus had encountered. His silver eyes held a mixture of curiosity and skepticism as he studied the human engineer. "So you are the primitive who believes he can solve what we cannot," Veltar said, his words carrying barely concealed disdain. "I'm the primitive who's willing to try," Marcus replied evenly. "Sometimes a fresh perspective helps." The chief engineer gestured toward a series of holographic displays that showed the quantum displacement drive in three-dimensional detail. The complexity was staggering, with systems nested within systems in patterns that defied easy understanding. "The drive operates by creating controlled quantum fluctuations that displace our ship through dimensional space," Veltar explained. "For short distances, it functions flawlessly. For long-range displacement, it becomes unstable and generates dangerous feedback." Marcus studied the displays, trying to understand the principles involved. The mathematics were beyond him, but the basic concept seemed to involve manipulating the fundamental structure of space-time to achieve instantaneous travel. "What changed 3 months ago?" he asked. "Systems don't just start failing randomly. Something must have triggered the malfunction." "Nothing changed," Veltar insisted. "We performed routine maintenance and standard operational procedures. All parameters remained within normal tolerances." "Nothing ever changes until it does," Marcus replied. "What was the last major operation before the problem started?" Veltar consulted his records, his expression growing thoughtful. "We completed a territorial expansion mission in the Zerion cluster. 3 star systems were brought under Dominion control through demonstration of overwhelming force. Any combat damage? Minimal. The indigenous species offered negligible resistance." Marcus nodded, filing away the casual mention of conquest for later consideration. "Show me the maintenance logs from that period. Sometimes the smallest changes can have the biggest effects." The next several hours were spent deep in technical documentation that pushed the limits of the translation software. Marcus worked alongside Cathara engineers who viewed him with expressions ranging from professional curiosity to open skepticism. He asked thousands of questions, most of which revealed the vast gaps in his understanding of their technology. But gradually, patterns began to emerge. The quantum displacement drive was indeed a marvel of engineering, but it operated according to principles that assumed perfect conditions and precise tolerances. It was designed by a civilization that valued perfection above adaptability. "Your entire approach is based on controlling every variable," Marcus observed during a break in the technical review. "What happens when you encounter something you can't control?" "We eliminate the uncontrolled variable," Veltar replied matter-of-factly. "And if you can't eliminate it?" "That situation does not arise. Cathara engineering accounts for all possibilities." Marcus smiled grimly. "In my experience, the universe always has one more possibility than you've accounted for." The breakthrough came during his examination of the drive's quantum containment field. The Cathara engineers had focused on the primary systems and major components, but Marcus approached the problem from the perspective of someone accustomed to jury-rigged solutions and unexpected failures. "Your containment field has microfractures," he announced after several hours of detailed analysis. "They're too small to affect routine operations, but they create quantum instability during high-energy displacement attempts." Veltar studied the data Marcus indicated, his expression skeptical. "Impossible. Our diagnostic systems would detect any structural anomalies." Your diagnostic systems are looking for known failure patterns, Marcus replied. These fractures don't match any established damage profile because they're caused by something your engineers never anticipated. The Empress had arrived during the technical discussion, her silver eyes focused intently on the holographic displays. Explain. Marcus highlighted specific sections of the containment field where subtle irregularities were visible to his trained eye. During your territorial expansion mission, you displaced your ship multiple times while carrying massive amounts of captured material and personnel. The extra mass didn't exceed your stated capacity, but it changed the quantum resonance patterns in ways your systems didn't compensate for. The drive is designed to handle far greater loads, Veltar protested. Under ideal conditions, yes, but you weren't operating under ideal conditions. You were making multiple displacements in rapid succession while carrying an uneven distribution of mass. Each displacement created tiny stress fractures in the containment field. Individually, they're insignificant. Combined, they create a cascading failure during long-range operations. The chief engineer ran new diagnostic routines based on Marcus's suggestions, his expression growing more troubled with each result. The fractures are indeed present, but they should not cause the observed failures. They wouldn't if your system was designed to handle imperfection, Marcus explained. But your technology assumes perfect operation. When something is slightly wrong, it doesn't adapt. It fails catastrophically. The Empress studied the technical data with obvious frustration. Can it be repaired? Not with your current approach, Marcus said bluntly. You could replace the entire containment system, but the same problem would eventually recur unless you change how the system handles unexpected variables. What do you suggest? Marcus took a deep breath, knowing his next words would either solve the problem or get him killed. You need to introduce controlled imperfection into the system. Add adaptive protocols that respond to changing conditions instead of simply following predetermined parameters. The silence that followed his suggestion was deafening. Veltar looked like Marcus had suggested painting the ship pink, while the Empress's expression was unreadable. You propose deliberately introducing flaws into our technology, she said finally. I propose making it adaptable, Marcus corrected. Human technology works because we assume things will go wrong and design systems that can handle the unexpected. Your technology fails because it can't adapt to situations outside its original parameters. Preposterous, Veltar declared. Cathara engineering represents the pinnacle of technological achievement. We will not corrupt it with primitive design philosophy. The Empress raised a hand, silencing the chief engineer's protests. Explain your solution in detail. Marcus spent the next hour outlining modifications that would introduce adaptive feedback loops into the quantum displacement drive. The changes were subtle but fundamental, requiring the Cathara to accept that their perfect technology might benefit from a bit of controlled chaos. The modifications you propose violate basic engineering principles, Veltar objected repeatedly. They violate your engineering principles, Marcus replied. But engineering is about solving problems, not adhering to philosophical purity. The Empress listened to the technical debate with growing interest. Marcus could see her weighing the implications of his suggestions against the rigid thinking that had brought her people to technological supremacy. Implement his modifications, she ordered finally. Empress, I must protest, Veltar began. You have had 3 months to solve this problem using conventional methods, she cut him off. Engineer Chen offers an unconventional solution. We will test it. The next phase of the operation was the most nerve-wracking of Marcus's career. Working alongside Cathara engineers who ranged from grudgingly cooperative to openly hostile, he guided the implementation of modifications that fundamentally changed how their quantum displacement drive operated. The process required delicate work, with tools designed for hands larger than his and systems that responded to thought patterns different from human neural architecture. but gradually the adaptive protocols were integrated into the drive's control systems. Preliminary tests show acceptable function, Veltar reported, his tone suggesting he was disappointed by the results. The containment field is stable, and quantum resonance patterns are within normal parameters. Now we test it under stress, Marcus said. Try a short-range displacement with maximum load. The test proceeded flawlessly, with the modified drive adapting smoothly to the unusual conditions. Additional tests confirmed that the system could handle variations that would have caused catastrophic failure before Marcus's modifications. Impossible, Veltar muttered, studying the diagnostic results. The drive should not function better with deliberate imperfections. It's not about perfection, Marcus explained patiently. It's about resilience. Your original design was perfect for ideal conditions, but fragile when faced with the unexpected. The modifications make it robust enough to handle the real universe, where nothing ever goes according to plan. The Empress had watched the entire testing process with growing satisfaction. Prepare for long-range displacement, she ordered. We returned to Kythera space immediately. The moment of truth arrived with surprising anticlimactic effect. The quantum displacement drive engaged smoothly, reality folded in ways that made Marcus's brain hurt, and suddenly they were somewhere else entirely. No alarms, no catastrophic failures, no spatial distortions threatening to tear the ship apart. Displacement successful, Veltar announced, wonder creeping into his voice. All systems operating within normal parameters, distance covered, 47 light-years in 0 elapsed time. The Empress turned to Marcus, her silver eyes holding something he had never seen there before. Genuine respect. You have accomplished what my finest engineers could not. The Kythera Dominion owes you a significant debt. Just doing my job, Marcus replied, though privately he was amazed that his solution had actually worked. Your job, perhaps, but not your responsibility. You risked your life to solve our problem and save lives you had no obligation to protect. This is not behavior we have encountered among other species. Marcus shrugged uncomfortably. Maybe that's because other species are smarter than humans. We have a bad habit of trying to fix things even when it's not our problem. Or perhaps, the Empress said thoughtfully, that is precisely what makes your species remarkable. The return journey to Research Station Alpha should have been a triumphant moment for Marcus, but he found himself troubled by something he couldn't quite identify. The Empress had been unusually quiet during the displacement, and her pale features held an expression of deep contemplation that made him nervous. Is everything all right? He asked, as they prepared to depart the Void Stalker. The drive seems to be working perfectly. The drive is indeed functioning beyond our original specifications, she replied. That is not what concerns me. Marcus waited for elaboration, but the Empress seemed lost in thought. Chief Engineer Veltar approached with what appeared to be grudging respect. Your modifications have improved efficiency by 12% beyond baseline, he reported. More importantly, the drive now adapts to changing conditions in real time. We could theoretically operate in environments that would have been impossible before. That's good, right? Marcus asked. It is disturbing, Veltar admitted. Kythera technology has always represented the absolute pinnacle of engineering achievement. To discover that primitive design philosophy could improve our systems challenges fundamental beliefs about our civilization's superiority. The implications of Veltar's statement began to sink in. Marcus had inadvertently demonstrated that human engineering approaches might have value even to a spacefaring civilization with technology beyond anything Earth could imagine. That revelation could reshape how the Kythera viewed both humans and themselves. The shuttle ride back to the research station passed in contemplative silence. Marcus stared out at the stars, wondering what he had set in motion by fixing an alien spaceship. First contact scenarios were supposed to involve diplomats and xenobiologists. not unlucky engineers with a talent for jury-rigging broken equipment. Dr. Williams was waiting in the docking bay when they arrived, her expression mixing relief with obvious concern. "Marcus, thank God you're back safely. How did it go?" "Better than expected," Marcus replied, though he wasn't entirely sure that was a good thing. The Empress disembarked with fluid grace, her silver eyes surveying the research station with new interest. "Dr. Williams, I must speak with Engineer Chen privately. There are matters to discuss that affect both our species." Something in her tone made Marcus's stomach clench with apprehension. He followed her to the observation deck, where Earth's star was visible as a distant point of light against the cosmic backdrop. "Your solution worked perfectly," the Empress began. "Too perfectly. The drive now operates at efficiency levels we thought impossible, and its adaptive capabilities exceed anything in our technological arsenal. Isn't that what you wanted?" "What I wanted was a functional drive. What you provided was a demonstration that human engineering philosophy might be superior to our own in fundamental ways." Her voice carried undertones Marcus couldn't quite interpret. "This creates complications." "What kind of complications?" The Empress moved closer to the observation window, her pale reflection ghost-like against the star field. "The Kithara Dominion has maintained control over 17 star systems through technological superiority. Our military forces are smaller than those of potential enemies, but our advanced technology provides overwhelming advantages in any conflict." Marcus began to understand the problem. And if other civilizations adopted human engineering approaches, they might develop technology that could challenge ours. Worse, they might improve our own technology beyond our ability to understand or control it. She turned to face him directly. "Your species represents a threat we have never encountered before." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Marcus had solved their problem so effectively that he had created a bigger one. His success had demonstrated that human creativity and adaptability might be more dangerous than any weapon. "So what happens now?" he asked, though he suspected he didn't want to know the answer. "That depends on you," the Empress replied. "The Kithara High Command will soon learn of your modifications to our drive. They will demand to know how a primitive species achieved what our finest engineers could not." "And you'll tell them?" "I will tell them the truth. That engineer Marcus Chen possesses abilities that could revolutionize Kithara technology or destroy our civilization's foundations." Her silver eyes held depths Marcus was afraid to explore. "What happens next depends on how they interpret that information." Marcus felt the weight of an entire civilization's future settling on his shoulders. He was just an engineer who wanted to fix broken things and keep people alive. He wasn't equipped to handle the political implications of first contact or the philosophical crisis he had apparently created. "What are my options?" he asked. "You could remain here and pretend this encounter never happened. Eventually, other Kithara expeditions would discover humanity, and your species would face conquest or extinction. Your technological insights would be lost forever. Or you could come with me to Kithara Prime. Present your engineering philosophy to the High Command directly. Convince them that cooperation with humanity serves their interests better than conquest." The choice was impossible. Stay behind and doom humanity to eventual destruction, or venture into alien space with no guarantee of survival and even less chance of success. Marcus looked out at the distant star that represented everything he had ever known. "There's a third option," he said finally. "Which is? We prove that human engineering can solve problems your people can't even imagine exist yet." The Empress studied him with renewed interest. "Explain." Marcus took a deep breath, formulating an idea that was either brilliant or suicidal. "You said the High Command will question how a primitive species achieved what Kithara engineers couldn't. Instead of explaining it, we demonstrate it. Give me a problem that your civilization has been unable to solve, something so challenging that success would prove human engineering has value beyond modification of existing technology. You propose to solve multiple impossible problems to prove your species' worth? I propose to solve the kinds of problems that only come up when perfect technology meets an imperfect universe. The kinds of problems your engineers can't solve because they don't think like humans do. The Empress was quiet for a long moment, her expression unreadable. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a note of something that might have been admiration. You are either the bravest or most foolish being I have ever encountered. Possibly both. In my experience, there's not always much difference between the two. Very well. There is indeed a problem that has defied Kythera engineering for over a century. Our homeworld's primary energy grid suffers from cascading failures that occur without warning or apparent cause. We have rebuilt the entire system 4 times, yet the failures persist. Marcus felt a familiar spark of professional interest. What kind of failures? Massive power surges that overload distribution networks across entire continents. Our engineers have analyzed every component, modeling every possible failure mode. The system should be completely stable, yet it fails catastrophically every few years. Have you considered that the problem might not be with the individual components? What else could it be? We have examined every element of the system in exhaustive detail. Sometimes the problem isn't what's broken, Marcus explained. Sometimes it's how the working parts interact with each other in ways nobody anticipated. The concept seemed to intrigue the Empress. You believe you can solve a problem that has plagued our civilization for over a century? I believe I can approach it differently than your engineers have. Whether that leads to a solution remains to be seen. And if you fail? Marcus grinned despite the circumstances. Then I fail spectacularly while trying to do something impossible. Seems like a very human way to go out. The Empress's expression shifted to something that might have been amusement. You are a most unusual species. Very well. We will present this proposal to the High Command. You will have the opportunity to demonstrate human engineering capabilities on our homeworld's most critical infrastructure. What about the people here? My colleagues? They will remain under Dominion protection while you attempt your impossible task. Dr. Williams and her team will be granted full access to our scientific databases as compensation for their cooperation. Marcus nodded, though he wondered if he would live long enough to see his colleagues again. When do we leave? Immediately. The High Command grows impatient with our extended absence. The next few hours passed in a blur of hasty preparations and difficult farewells. Dr. Williams was simultaneously excited about the scientific opportunities and terrified for Marcus's safety. You don't have to do this, she insisted as he packed his essential tools. We could find another way to establish diplomatic relations. No, we couldn't, Marcus replied honestly. The Empress was being diplomatic when she talked about options. This is humanity's only chance to prove we're worth keeping around. And if you can't solve their power grid problem, then at least we'll have tried. Besides, how hard can it be? It's just engineering. Dr. Williams stared at him in disbelief. Marcus, you're talking about the infrastructure of an entire planet. A civilization that builds ships like the Void Stalker has energy requirements beyond anything we can imagine. Which means they probably over-engineered the solution, Marcus replied with more confidence than he felt. Over-engineering creates its own problems. The departure was surreal. Marcus found himself standing in an alien shuttle bay, surrounded by beings who could snuff out human civilization without breaking stride, preparing to travel to worlds that existed only in science fiction dreams. Yet somehow it felt like just another day at the office, if his office happened to be scattered across multiple star systems. The journey to Kythera Prime took 3 days. during which Marcus immersed himself in technical documentation that pushed the limits of human comprehension. The Kythera energy grid was indeed a marvel of engineering, capable of supplying power to a planetary population of over 15 billion people, while maintaining perfect efficiency under normal conditions. The problem was that normal conditions were a mathematical abstraction. Real-world systems operated under constantly changing variables that interacted in ways that defied predictive modeling. The Kythera had built a perfect system for an imperfect universe, then wondered why it kept breaking. "Your power grid assumes static load conditions," Marcus observed during one technical review session. "But your population centers shift energy consumption based on daily cycles, seasonal variations, and social activities. The grid can't adapt fast enough to compensate for these changes." "Impossible," Chief Engineer Veltar protested. "Our distribution algorithms account for all predictable variations in power demand." "All predictable variations, yes. But what about the unpredictable ones? What happens when 1 million people simultaneously decide to run high-energy manufacturing processes because of some social trend or economic incentive? Such scenarios are statistically insignificant. Tell that to your power grid when it collapses under the load." The approach to Kythera Prime was breathtaking. The planet gleamed like a polished jewel against the darkness of space, its surface covered in cities that followed geometric patterns of mathematical perfection. Orbital installations surrounded the world in carefully planned layers, each serving specific functions in the planetary infrastructure. "Beautiful," Marcus murmured, watching the planet grow larger in the observation ports. "Function determines form," the Empress replied, though her voice carried a note of pride. Kythera Prime represents the ultimate achievement in planetary engineering. Marcus studied the orbital facilities with growing understanding. "Your entire civilization is based on perfect integration and flawless operation. Everything works together in predetermined harmony." "As it should be. Except that perfect integration creates system-wide vulnerabilities. When one element fails, it can cascade through the entire network." The Empress's expression grew troubled. "You suggest that our greatest strength is also our greatest weakness? I suggest that resilience requires a certain amount of redundant chaos. Perfect systems are perfectly fragile." The landing on Kythera Prime was as smooth as every other aspect of alien technology Marcus had experienced. The spaceport existed in a state of controlled elegance that made human facilities look crude by comparison, with ships arriving and departing in choreographed sequences that eliminated any wasted motion or time. Marcus was escorted through the capital city toward the High Command Complex, passing through streets that curved in precise mathematical spirals and buildings that rose in perfect geometric proportions. Everything was beautiful, functional, and utterly alien to human sensibilities. "Your cities are amazing," he told the Empress as they traveled. "But where are the mistakes? The accidents? The things that weren't planned but turned out to be useful anyway? Why would we preserve mistakes? Because sometimes mistakes lead to better solutions than perfect planning does." The High Command Complex was a crystalline structure that seemed to grow from the planet's surface like a natural formation. Inside, Kythera officials waited in a vast chamber that could have accommodated a human city block. Their silver eyes tracked Marcus's movement with expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed hostility. Empress Zarathi presented Marcus's solution to the quantum drive problem with clinical precision, explaining how human engineering philosophy had achieved what Kythera technology could not. The assembled officials listened in silence that grew more ominous with each technical detail. "This primitive solved our most advanced engineering challenge through deliberate introduction of flaws?" High Commander Thaindor asked, his voice carrying deadly undertones. "Through introduction of adaptive flexibility," the Empress corrected. "The modifications improved performance beyond our original specifications." "Irrelevant. That a lesser species could improve Cathara technology suggests fundamental flaws in our approach. This cannot be permitted. Marcus felt the mood in the chamber shift toward something that promised an unpleasant end to his engineering career. But the Empress had anticipated this reaction. Engineer Chen has proposed to solve the power grid instabilities that have plagued our homeworld for over a century, she announced. Success would demonstrate that human engineering capabilities complement rather than threaten our own. The chamber fell silent. The power grid problem was legendary among the Cathara, a persistent failure that had defied solution despite massive resources devoted to the effort. The idea that an alien could solve it was either insulting or intriguing, depending on one's perspective. "And if this primitive fails?" High Commander Thaindor asked. Marcus stepped forward before the Empress could answer. "Then you can feed me to your power grid and tell everyone that human engineering is worthless. But if I succeed, maybe we can work together instead of you conquering us." The bluntness of his statement seemed to surprise the assembled officials. They were accustomed to elaborate diplomatic protocols and careful political maneuvering. Marcus's direct approach was as alien to them as their technology was to him. "You speak as if your species has something to offer us," Thaindor observed. "We do. We offer the ability to solve problems you can't even see yet, to adapt when your perfect systems encounter imperfect situations, to keep things working when they should have failed long ago. Demonstrate this claim. You have 7 standard cycles to resolve the power grid instabilities. Success will grant your species protected status within the Dominion. Failure will result in your termination and the eventual subjugation of your homeworld. 7 days to save humanity by fixing an alien power grid that had defeated an entire civilization's best engineers for over a century. Marcus had faced impossible deadlines before, but this redefined the concept of pressure. "I'll need complete access to the grid monitoring systems and the authority to make modifications without prior approval," he said. "Granted, Chief Engineer Veltar will provide technical assistance and ensure you do not damage critical infrastructure." As the assembly dispersed, Marcus found himself alone with the Empress in the vast chamber. Her silver eyes held emotions he couldn't interpret. "You realize the magnitude of what you have undertaken?" she asked. "I realize that if I don't fix your power grid, humanity is doomed and I'm dead. Beyond that, I'm trying not to think too hard about the details. Your species' ability to function under impossible pressure continues to amaze me. Most civilizations would have collapsed under such circumstances." "Maybe we're too stubborn to know when to collapse." The Empress moved closer, her predatory grace somehow less threatening than before. "Marcus Chen, there is something you must understand. My interest in your success extends beyond mere scientific curiosity." "What do you mean?" "The Cathara Dominion faces challenges that superior technology cannot solve. Our expansion has reached the point where we encounter civilizations that resist conquest through unconventional means. We need allies who think differently than we do." Marcus began to understand. "You're looking for partners, not just subjects to conquer." "I am looking for solutions to problems that perfect technology cannot address. Your species may provide those solutions if you survive the next 7 days. "No pressure at all," Marcus muttered. "Indeed. Shall we begin examining your impossible challenge?" The Power Grid Control Center was a cathedral of technology that hummed with the concentrated energy of an entire planet. Holographic displays showed power flows that could illuminate star systems, while control interfaces responded to the thoughts and gestures of Cathara operators who monitored every aspect of the global energy network. Marcus spent his first day simply trying to understand the scale of what he was dealing with. The Cathara grid didn't just supply power to cities and industries, it maintained the planetary atmosphere, controlled weather patterns, and provided the energy for the orbital facilities that protected the homeworld from cosmic threats. "Your grid does everything," he observed to Veltar during one technical briefing. Power distribution, environmental control, orbital operations, even communication networks. It's all integrated into one massive system. Efficiency through integration, Veltar replied proudly. Our grid represents the ultimate achievement in energy management. And when it fails, everything fails at once. Which is why failure cannot be tolerated, yet it continues to occur despite our best efforts. Marcus studied the failure patterns, looking for connections that the Cathera engineers had missed. The crashes appeared random, but he suspected there were subtle patterns hidden in the chaos. Human experience with unreliable technology had taught him to look for the kinds of interactions that occurred only under specific combinations of circumstances. Show me the social media activity patterns during the last 3 grid failures, he requested. Veltar looked confused. Social media? What relevance does that have to power distribution? Humor me. I want to see how your population was behaving when the crashes occurred. The correlation was subtle, but unmistakable. Each grid failure had occurred during periods of unusual social coordination, when large segments of the population engaged in synchronized activities that created unexpected patterns of energy demand. The grid's predictive algorithms couldn't compensate for the sudden spikes in power consumption because they fell outside all historical precedents. Your power grid crashes because your population occasionally acts in ways your engineers never anticipated, Marcus announced after 3 days of intensive analysis. Impossible, Veltar protested. Our algorithms account for all possible variations in consumer behavior. All possible variations based on past behavior patterns. But what happens when millions of people decide to do something completely new at the same time? Marcus showed them the data correlations, demonstrating how social trends created energy demand patterns that overloaded specific nodes in the distribution network. The crashes occurred when the grid encountered load patterns that had never existed before and therefore hadn't been designed to handle. The solution isn't to predict every possible consumer behavior, he explained. The solution is to design a grid that can adapt to unexpected patterns in real time. The modifications Marcus proposed were similar in philosophy to what he had done with the quantum drive, but far more complex in implementation. He wanted to introduce adaptive protocols throughout the entire planetary grid, creating a system that could learn from unexpected demand patterns and adjust its distribution algorithms accordingly. You propose to make our perfect grid deliberately imperfect, Veltar said, his voice heavy with disapproval. I propose to make it adaptable, Marcus corrected. Perfect systems work perfectly until they don't. Adaptable systems keep working even when conditions change beyond their original parameters. The implementation required delicate work with systems that controlled the life support for an entire planet. Marcus found himself coordinating modifications across thousands of distribution nodes while monitoring energy flows that could power small stars. It was the most complex engineering project in human history, and failure would kill billions of people. On the 7th day, as his deadline approached, Marcus activated the modified grid protocols and watched as the planetary power system learned to think for itself. The adaptive algorithms began analyzing consumption patterns in real time, adjusting power distribution to compensate for unexpected demands before they could cascade into system-wide failures. Preliminary tests show stable operation, Veltar reported, wonder creeping into his voice. The grid is adapting to load variations that would have triggered catastrophic failures under the previous system. Marcus allowed himself a moment of satisfaction before the true test began. At his request, the High Command authorized a stress test that simulated the exact conditions that had caused the last 3 grid failures. Under the old system, these scenarios would have crashed the entire network within hours. The modified grid handled them without difficulty, its adaptive protocols learning from each challenge and becoming more resilient with every test. After 24 hours of continuous stress testing, the system remained stable and had actually improved its efficiency ratings. "Impossible," High Commander Thaindor murmured, studying the test results. "The grid should have failed completely under such conditions." "The grid learned," Marcus explained. "Instead of following rigid protocols, it adapted to changing circumstances. When it encountered problems it had never seen before, it developed new solutions in real time." The implications of Marcus's success extended far beyond the power grid. He had demonstrated that human engineering philosophy could improve Cathara technology in fundamental ways, providing capabilities that their perfect systems could never achieve alone. "Engineer Marcus Chen," the High Commander announced formally, "you have accomplished what our finest engineers believed impossible. The Cathara Dominion acknowledges that your species possesses valuable capabilities that complement our own." "Does this mean humanity gets to keep existing?" Marcus asked. "It means your species has earned the right to exist as partners rather than subjects. The Earth system will be granted protected status, and formal diplomatic relations will be established between our civilizations." Marcus felt the weight of an impossible responsibility lifting from his shoulders. He had saved humanity by proving that sometimes the best solution to a perfect problem was a perfectly imperfect approach. Empress Zarathi approached him as the formal proceedings concluded, her silver eyes holding something that might have been affection. "You have exceeded every expectation, Marcus Chen. Your species will be welcomed as valued allies of the Dominion." "Just doing my job," Marcus replied, though he suspected his job description had permanently expanded beyond anything he had ever imagined. "Perhaps," she said, with something that might have been a smile. "But you have done it in ways that will reshape both our civilizations." As Marcus prepared for his journey home, he reflected on the strange turns his life had taken. He had started as the unluckiest engineer in the solar system and ended up as humanity's first interstellar diplomat. It was, he decided, exactly the kind of impossible situation that humans were uniquely qualified to handle. The universe, it turned out, needed engineers who could make impossible things work, and sometimes being human was exactly the right qualification for the job.